When are you going to argue with people, Zack? When are you going to have people on the podcast that you disagree with? Look, I'll be straight with you. When I launched this podcast, I wanted a variety of guests, including people maybe from the right. But as I've carried on as leader of the Green Party, I'm constantly in those situations where I'm debating on things that aren't really the real issue. They're just big distractions. And you guys are telling me over and over again through emails and social media that actually one thing you're really enjoying about this podcast is the complexity, the nuanced conversations. Now, that doesn't mean I won't have people on I disagree with. And in fact, that happens quite a lot. But I'm not intending to have people on where we just have an argument. You can see me on so many other podcasts doing just that. But actually, there's one podcast that I went on, and actually, I just had a really great time. So I thought I'd return the favour. Today, with the two women who present the brilliant podcast for Trawl, this is my conversation with Marina and Jemma.
Hello, Zack. Chris Packham here. I hear you've signed up to Ecotalk. That's very bold of you. Brilliant. And if you don't mind me saying, very bright of you too. If your audience is half as smart as you, then they'll sign up too at ecotalk.co.uk.
So I was with a friend yesterday who also works for the Green Party, and I said that I was podcasting with you both today, and she was like, the Trawl, your podcast, is a bit like if your mum and her friends had come round with a glass of wine and they're having a great time. And then she went, oh, don't worry, my mum's only 40.
Oh, yes! I was about to say.
As I told that story. And I thought, actually, that really rings true, that you two like clearly have this amazing friendship that also rotates around the politics that you talk about. But I think you give a really clear demonstration of the things can be really serious and really worrying in the world, but actually you can have a laugh about them too.
Well, thank you. And I think, yeah, that's probably quite accurate. It's a very unusual podcast and probably relationship, because I think you're right at the heart of it. It's two women who care deeply, are very engaged, are quite boring, really, aren't we? We find it, it's budget day, this is very, very exciting. Whereas I think there's lots of people who perhaps they think that politics isn't for them. And so we try to break things down, don't we? Mm. And we also howl with laughter at some stuff, but we've both probably cried at points as well. And that's never planned. But perhaps when you've seen umpteen clips the night before of things that are happening in Palestine, it's also totally normal. Mm. And so that probably reflects how other people.
Yeah, and it's a coping mechanism as well, right? So it's like, where do you put this? I think for both of us, we got dragged, into politics because of Brexit. And we started to go, what the fuck is going on? Mm. Who are the people sort of pioneering all of this? Who are the people spouting all this shit? Why are they allowed to spout all this shit? And then slowly you dip your toe in and you're fully immersed. And it's hard to sort of be around other people who just don't know or don't care. And so having people that just feel the way you do, that are going, what is going on, is really lovely. And the community we've built that listens to the podcast are exactly that. It's like collective therapy, isn't it?
Yeah. Marina's just my spirit animal in many, many ways. In terms of work ethic, we're both bananas. We're like, so you're going on holiday? Yep, 100%. Or you must have a break. I'm going to take my microphone. Okay, great.
This is very relatable. How did you both meet?
Okay, so I started following Marina when it was Twitter, when Twitter was excellent, pre-Musk. So some years ago now, and just thought, everything this woman is saying, oh God, I love it. Plus at that point she was sort of like being quite salty with quite a few Tory MPs who, and you noticed her. Then I remember looking at her picture and going, oh, she's really hot as well. So I was like fangirling slightly. And then I've been going on the Jeremy Vine show for years. I was definitely out the political closet, but I was sort of trying to be, maybe not too controversial, because I was worried about getting sacked from my other job. Right. Marina was doing it all for me. Fucking worry. So then anyway, we got in touch, and then at a certain point I just said, I've just got this instinct, would you like to do something together? Just, let's do a podcast. And we had no idea what we were doing. Yeah. We did it just ourselves with help from somebody for a while. We didn't even have any ads on it for about 6 months, built it up to a nice level. And then it's
I'm
just
so
gone
grateful.
mad.
I'm so grateful that I met her. We have had an incredible journey together. But if it had not been, because I was on maternity leave with my second kid, and so I was like, I've got a bit of time here. I can actually do a bit of a
it's
new.
Not how most women think.
Well,
but,
just a little bit of a new project, and it just I'm so glad we've done it.
But since we met, We've been to Glastonbury together and done the trawl. We've been for dinner at Gary Lineker's house. We're sitting here with you, someone we seriously admire. We've met Harold Vorderman. We are two women having the time of our lives. But then my daughter, she's like, oh, God, you've got to do this. And I'm like, yeah, we've also co-written and produced and hosted 300 episodes. There's some work behind it to do all of these incredible
That's a real trawl.
Yes. So, yeah.
And sometimes the trawl is quite depressing, right? We try to find the moments of levity, but sometimes, especially when we don't shy away from the hard discussions, we don't shy away from talking about the Middle East, and it's hard, but you never know what you're going to get with it. There is
potential Russian influence in our democratic system. I mean, you can't say anything for sure, can you?
But
just maybe.
But then we have so much fun. For example, when Zoran Mamdani goes into the Oval Office, and everyone's expecting this showdown with socialism. And then he makes Trump fall in love with him.
Yeah, what do you think went on there? I still can't.
We kind of basically think that what does Trump care about? Nothing except his own ego. And that day the photographers were there, and suddenly there's this guy, and it's like he doesn't care actually fundamentally that this man has called him a fascist and this and that, because to him that's okay. You call me whatever you want. I have no moral core. So actually he's just a bit like, you're quite dreamy. I think he fancied him a bit as well. I mean, that's just...
There's also the fact that Trump is drawn to charisma. He's drawn to people who are popular. And don't forget, Trump was a Democrat once upon a time. He only bent to that way because he couldn't win the support of Democrats. And I think he publicly said that he could win over Republicans because they're not as intelligent, essentially. So he probably does share some
he said
ideology
that.
with him.
He actually said that. And also, I just think he thought, you are rocking a nice burgundy polo neck. This is very autumn 2025. Maybe that would suit me. And I literally think it's that kind of stuff going on in his strange mind.
There's so much joy I want to explore with you both. I want to go to a more grim place, first of all, though, because I'm listening to you both laugh, and I've seen some of the comments on some of your episodes that you put out and some of your social media output. As two outspoken women in politics, how do you deal with the kind of the just wave of abuse? I feel bad now because you're both laughing.
No, you just dragged the energy down there, Zach. I have said this to Jemma as well, because we have it. We have moments where it can be quite hard, and like we might have got something a little bit wrong. We aren't journalists, we aren't reporters. We are two people just like everyone else, observing what's going on and putting our take on things. And sometimes the backlash is awful, and there's a lot of misogyny, and there's a lot of sexism. There's a lot of I get called like being basically told I'm thick, I'm just a wag or whatever, all these comments. So I've got to a place now where I tend to sort of like grenade and go. Like certainly on X is just a cesspit now, so I will just like pop something in there and then I will go. Instagram is a much friendlier place, so I engage a bit more, but also just remind myself that these people fucking losers. Like they wouldn't come up to me in real life. They just wouldn't. All the people that I've met who recognise me in public, they're lovely, they're warm, they're kind, they're appreciative. No one, in fact, just there was one time at a Labour conference 2 years ago where someone said something like, there's that lefty lunatic or something like that. I can't remember. Labour conference, with Starmer. I know, and apart from that, I've had nothing.
I'm most of the time okay. I'm so half glass full, and sometimes to my detriment, because I think sometimes also I can even look at things that are happening in the political landscape and have one view, and then perhaps, like you say, 3 days later think, and you can't really go back and change what you said. So yeah, but I think that on the whole, we get so much love as well that I tend to notice that more, unless, and Marina knows this, I'm just having one of those days. And if I'm having one of those days, you know what it's like. Either you've just not slept much or you've, I don't know, hormones, something. And it will be one comment, and it's usually something about my appearance, and it will hurt my feelings. And then I'm like, oh, and I feel vulnerable and I feel a bit exposed for a few hours. But then I've also got a terrible memory, so then I forget about it. And that's it.
Yeah.
And presumably a lot of these people aren't even people, they're just bots as well. We were talking about Russia before,
Maybe.
but we know that a lot of these things are just automated. I guess that's the question partly because I meet women all the time who, this is a question they often ask me. They go, want to get more involved in politics, but how do you deal with the abuse? And I often talk about it, but I go, I think there is a different layer of it when you add misogyny and sexism to the abuse that anyone who's progressive or on the left gets anyway.
Maybe a bit, yeah. But I'd go back to, honestly, if there are women out there who are thinking they'd like to get more involved, as long as you go through your life trying to be a decent person, and you also, I think we're quite good at going, yeah, I probably did get that wrong. That so disarms people. So if perhaps they're going, well, I think I'll go, yeah, maybe you've got a point. I mean, for me, I'm quite nuanced about things anyway. And then they'll go, oh, okay, well, thanks so much for messaging back. And they're so astounded that you've engaged.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, I'd also be honest about, I've been on LBC before during Cross Question, and, you know, I was with these sort of fairly weighty people. What do I mean? I mean people that have maybe worked in the military, and then they're asking me about Ukraine, and I'm just a bit like, well, I can say what I think, but you're probably better going and asking that person.
Right.
There are areas of geopolitics that I don't know everything about, and I think that that's so refreshing when people hear you say that. Whereas on other things, I'm like, no, I really know what I think on this.
How do you cope with it? Because I'm guessing you get some awful stuff.
Yeah, I tend to...
You reshare it all.
Exactly. I tend to go, what is the kind of thing that someone sees as a flaw or a weakness, and how do you turn it to a strength? So it's interesting what you just said, because I sometimes think people who say they're experts, and we do need experts on things, so I'm not doing experts in kind of the population's had enough of experts, Michael Gove 2016 kind of way. Yeah. But I think there is something to be said that some of these experts have absolutely trashed the country and destroyed the country. Yeah. Particularly think about economic experts. We had the former Bank of England the other day who said that my economics was la la land. And I just thought, well, actually la la land seems to be the economic system right now, where poor people are getting poorer, rich people are getting richer, people are really suffering, and you're kind of saying, oh, well, we'll just keep it how it is. We'll just do a few tweaks. And I'm like, you don't have to be an economist to look at things and go, actually, we need a different kind of economy.
Couldn't agree more.
Can I ask a question on that, though? Because obviously, Gemma and I think you're wonderful. And I think more and more of my social circle are starting to go, Zack, this Zack is quite interesting. And I've got one of my mums in the NCT group who is going, I really like him, but I am worried about, say he comes into power and he goes and does this big old spending spree, which is great. We know long-term investment into infrastructure is wonderful. But short-term, our debt, if it gets bigger, we aren't like a Japan, right? Most of our debt is internationally held, whereas Japan, for example, is insulated from spikes in gilt mark yields because theirs is domestically held. So what's to stop you going on a massive spending spree, not for tax cuts for the rich, like Truss did, but for good stuff, but then just scaring the shit out of the markets and there being a mortgage like interest rate hike like we had last time?
I think there's a few things. I think the first thing that often gets missed is you need to tell a story. So if you're in power, you need to talk to the people primarily, but also you need to talk to the markets. And I think one of the big problems is we hear these fiscal rules all the time, but since 2010 we've had I think 7 or 9 different fiscal rules in the last 15 years. So we kind of pretend, or they pretend, that these fiscal rules are the hard lines that absolutely can't be broken, and then a few months later or a few years later they go, oh no, we're doing different fiscal rules now. And I think that's partly what the markets don't like, is the instability of lack of coherent narrative. So I think that's the first thing, is to be really clear about what your economic agenda is. I think the second thing is, so to separate debt and spending. So if I start on spending, you've made the argument partly, which is if you spend £1, say on tackling the climate crisis, you get £1.88 back. Same with health. People often go, I don't understand how health spending makes money. But it's about the cost of inaction. So if you don't spend money on the health service, you get what we get now, which is people with long-term health conditions, people missing jobs, people missing work. Really bad for productivity, really bad for the economy.
£4 back per pound in health spending.
Oh, I didn't know that was a figure. There we go. That's an example of where I didn't know something.
Yeah, if you tune into the Trawl, you'll get more nuggets like that on the Trawl podcast.
Nice, I love it. Plug. So I think that's the important thing. And that's, of course, both in terms of long-term, in terms of capital investment, but to your question about the short-term, I think as long as you're clear that's where we're going. And Rachel Reeves is doing this to a way, but doing it in a much more absurd way, which is she is saying that they now have more fiscal headroom because the economy is going to grow. Now, the problem is You don't know if your economy is going to
Yeah.
grow. So to pretend that you're based in reality and to pretend that these figures are really tangible because you are saying we are going to grow, so I have more headroom because in a year or two these things are going to make, is already economic nonsense. But second, to the wider point, the cost of inaction. So if we don't do these things right now, we won't have an economy because we're going to have wildfires and floods, and this is costing an immense amount of money. And actually, if we want to talk about the markets, these are the things that they really care about.
Yeah.
And actually, insurance companies more than anyone, and you don't mess, like insurance companies don't mess around. They're worried about their money. And they're saying the climate crisis is a real credible threat. And actually, we need to be spending right now on climate adaptation, on infrastructure.
You wouldn't spook the markets, and our mortgages wouldn't spiral again. That's what you're saying.
The mortgages will only spiral if you spook the markets by not being clear and coherent about what you're doing. But actually, I think if your pathway is really clear and you're going to back that up with public investment, then you can take the markets with you. And I suppose the one comparison I would give is, not that I would compare my political programme entirely with Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell, but we heard these stories at the same time. I think it's in the public domain that they had a meeting with the Bank of England and with various kind of sectors, and they said, you know what, this is going to be okay. It's really clear what you're doing. I think the problem is when you do a Liz Truss
It's
and you
not
just kind
costed,
of bull in
yeah.
a China
Yeah.
shop, you're funding unfunded tax cuts. It's interesting. It's a more complex discussion, but actually that all did stabilise as well when the Bank of England a few days later went, okay, there's some shifts we can make here. And the Bank of England is a public body, so often it gets talked about. There's a whole conversation around the independence of Bank of England as if we have no control or influence over it as a public institution. And again, I think we've got to break down some of those economic myths.
I think that what frustrates me is that when they talk about like hardworking people and growth and all of this, and then you look at what we've just all being asked to do, right, which is to stick with this fiscal drag, right? So I do think that's very negative for most people. The idea that, oh God, I'm working so flipping hard. This is across the spectrum, from, say earning quite a small amount right up to probably in the hundreds of thousands of pounds, that no matter how much progress I seem to be making or the pay rises that I'm getting, I don't feel any better off. Right. So I'm not going to book a holiday. I'm not going to move house. I'm not going to take my kids to this because it's too expensive. I'm not going to buy concert tickets I didn't buy the other day because they were so expensive. And I do really well. I'm good, but I don't have any spare cash. And I feel like this budget, where's the reform on the whole of the idea with that threshold that hasn't moved for years and years and years and years? Surely that needs to change for anybody to be able to spend a bit of money.
Yeah.
Well, it also feels like it was fundamentally dishonest by Rachel Reeves,
Yeah.
because actually I would have rather she went for public and said, actually, we have public services, they need funding.
Yeah.
This is a kind of story we're going to tell. Now, I disagree with some of that story, and we'll get back to that in a second. But actually what we did was this fiscal drag where people are dragged into thresholds. You said you're not going to tax working people, but actually clearly you are. People are going to feel that pinch rather than multimillionaires and billionaires. I think a more direct answer, I'm coming back to your question, but through Gemma's kind of frame there, is this household budget and national economy metaphor, which
Maggie
we know...
Thatcher. We've got Maggie Thatcher to blame for that.
But it just runs throughout and throughout. And what I don't think I realised until the last month, because once I started talking about this on Koonsberg, people got in touch with me and said, did you know the BBC did a review just 2 years ago into economics and the way things are discussed? And actually Laura Koonsberg, along with other commentators, were marked out as examples of where they got it wrong. And actually, the Still Not report, which was the BBC report, said that this metaphor is or can be extremely misleading. Those are literally phrases they used, extremely misleading. And then I saw this week a Labour MP putting out custard creams and biscuits and explaining the economy in exactly that way as a household metaphor. And I go, either you don't know that that's not how the economy works, which is not great, or you do know it, but you're willing to keep flirting with this metaphor because it justifies austerity. And that's definitely not great either. Yeah. And I think that metaphor is so deep-rooted in people because we've heard it over and over again. And it feels quite intuitive, this idea that like you've got money coming in, money coming out, and it's as simple as that. And I think as politicians, as commentators, journalists, anyone who's on the left or progressive and wants to see a shift in politics, we've got to find a way to tell this economic story that can't allow the idea of the bond markets being spooked to stop any change. I think it's also important to say that bond markets do matter, the debt matters, so it's not about like rejecting it entirely, but to make it the principal thing that we always care about or is always centred, as opposed to the climate crisis, the nature crisis, the mental health crisis, inequality crisis. Yeah. It's so clear that compassion should be at the heart of this.
I want to get to a point where people who are on 40 grand a year, 60 grand a year are phoning up programmes to stick up for billionaires because it's so unfair. They work really, really hard. And I'm like, oh my God.
I know, it's like the mansion tax. We already had it with the mansion tax. People with a flat calling up LBC
Yeah.
to attack the mansion tax.
I just think the mansion tax isn't going to achieve much, 400
400
million.
million.
And it's like, and actually, I mean, I agree, and, fine. But there will be the odd person as an old lady sat in a thing. Why aren't you going for people who've got billions?
Absolutely.
Millions. Someone who's sat in a house that's a huge fat house, fine, but they have got to scrape together like $4.5 grand or whatever. The people out there, Richard, is it Bergen or Bergen?
Bergen,
thank you. He did this brilliant thing on Instagram with some pasta.
Yeah, it was great.
Wasn't it great? And he's like, here, if you own 40 grand, that's your pasta. This is a billionaire. And he just put this table, it was like a table like this, and the packets of pasta went up to the ceiling.
I think yours has been the strongest one yet.
Well, thank you.
The analogy with the go on. I set the
No,
stage.
please say.
I don't want to butcher it, so you do it.
Oh, that's okay. If it actually happened in this room, so I turned to the producer and I said, how long was a million seconds ago, and how long was a billion seconds ago? And we got some good examples. And then he said, what happens if you do it in minutes? And I was like, I don't know, minutes might be quite confusing. So he went on his laptop, and I was still writing kind of my budget script, and he looks up and he went, so a million minutes ago was the beginning of 2024. A billion minutes ago, you're in the Roman Empire. And I was like,
nuts?
that's it. That's the thing we need everyone to know.
And yet we don't do it. And that's the thing. It felt like last week's budget was just another squandered opportunity to actually do something to address the inequality in the country.
I reckon if you get to a billion, you get a rosette. Right, you go, well done, mate. There you go, you done it. Lovely. You get a badge. You can have a little tiara.
You won
You can
capitalism.
have a little sash. Billionaire.
Although the rosette comes with capital gains tax, so you have to give it back and all your
But
money.
that's it. No more billions. No more billions. No one needs one. But if we let them even have one.
Zack has signed up to Ecotalk. He's taken the great plunge. Why has he done that? Well, he's a man who sees sense. Firstly, brilliant network coverage. Secondly, fantastic customer service. And thirdly, of course, all of the profits are going to nature restoration. Yes, we're spending them on rewilding. And you can go to our website to see what we're up to. You can also get some wildlife tips from yours truly. So come on, follow his lead and sign up to Ecotalk. All you've got to do is go to ecotalk.co.uk, and it's simple, absolutely simple. And look at the benefits. Life is beautiful.
What are you going to do? What would you do if you were in power with the state of our press landscape? And how are you dealing with them now, actually?
Yeah, so in the long term, so there's an amazing group called the Media Reform Coalition who have been bringing together particularly people who have had they're not politicians, they're just people who are living their lives, whose lives have been destroyed by the media because they found a story, they've doorstepped them, and then they've done everything they can to destroy their lives. And it's just not acceptable. And I think it's been so normalized, sometimes we're just like, that's how the sun behaves. And that's not okay. We need to make sure we're reforming that. So Leveson 2, I think, is the first thing.
Yes.
We know we had part of that investigation, but it didn't go the full way. But also I think we need loads more regulation in the way that the media works. Now, we've obviously got to be careful with it because, if we had Farage as Prime Minister or any kind of reform government, I don't like the idea of any authoritarian government being able to tell the media what they can and can't say. So obviously that needs really tight regulation. So one thing the Media Reform Coalition are talking about is sortition. So this is just the idea, like a jury service, that you get lots of people from the public who go on the board, say, of the BBC for 2 years, and it's not their full-time job, but they're there to scrutinise the rest of the work of the BBC, to go actually as representatives of the people, rather than power and rather than the government and wealth. We're going to look at what you're doing, we're going to ask questions, and we have the power to veto. So if you think that something's happening that you don't think should happen, that group of people could go, it could be this other way. So I think there's something there around media regulation, but it going to ordinary people, quote unquote, where they're able to look after it. In terms of how I deal with it now, it's hard not to sound earnest about this, so I'm just going to caveat with that. But I've never taken money from private healthcare, from oil and gas companies, from arms trade companies, so I really have nothing to hide. My only two vested interests are to protect the people that I care about and to protect the planet. And I think when you're coming from that place, it just means you're able to speak. And, it has not escaped my notice how many journalists have said recently, he just answers questions and then he stops, or it feels like he's thinking out loud in real time, which can be really dangerous for a politician because you're not quite sure where your sentence is going to end. But I also know if I'm not hiding things, and I know I'm not going to say something that's offensive to people, you kind of go, I can just speak. And then I've definitely got myself in places where I've thought, oh, I'm in trouble now because what I've just said sounds a little bit more complex than the thing before. But then you just have the kind of confidence that you go, actually, people can deal with nuance, they can deal with complexity. I'm just going to look them in the eye and explain what the nuance is here and try and take people with me.
I think, it's your authenticity that's cutting through. You know, my brother, who's early 30s, you are the first politician who has inspired him. He walked into a family Sunday lunch the other day and he went, I've just joined the Green Party. And I was just like, fantastic. And he was like, yeah, it's the first person who's speaking my language and who sounds positive and is giving me a little bit of hope. But it's really interesting because my problem is I feel that it doesn't matter where you're from, which party you're from. Like the Labour Party have done some things that I feel are so abhorrent, and yet they're still human beings. So for me, it's like Rachel Reeves. Some of the criticism that she comes in for, I don't like it because I feel like, and some of the policy is terrible as well, fine. That's different to the person. But that's why it pissed me off more when she stood up the other day and sort of dragged you about the hypnotherapy thing, which we've already, it's just
During
so
her
nothing.
budget speech.
During the budget
by the way, though.
speech. Well, that's good. But I thought, I don't get it. As a woman who's gone through the media mud for what her husband's estate agent not signing a form, which was basically that scandal, which was a load of bollocks, right? So I felt sorry for her for that. Equally, then why are you then sort of lowering yourself to their level?
I agree. A very senior journalist who I won't name because they said it to me off the record just said they were really confused by it too.
Yeah.
They said that at the moment I've got the highest net favourability rating of any party leader, and Rachel Reeves' favourability rating is very low. So why would a very unpopular person attack a popular politician over something that just seems a little bit... it just felt like a desperate attack, especially during a budget speech. You're like, this is your biggest moment of the year to present your case to the public. What I would say more than anything, and by the way, sorry, let me start with I agree entirely with what you said. I think the attacking of people is something that we should all call out, especially when we don't agree with their political views. I'll come on to Zia Youssef in a second because I'm aware it sounds like I could be contradicting
you at the
me.
moment, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's quite obsessed. But also without attacking someone, I think it's okay to criticise them. And the fact that whoever wrote that joke, it wasn't a particularly funny joke. And she had to check her script halfway through telling the joke for the punchline. I was like, come on, Rachel, not only are you now an awful chancellor, like you shouldn't try comedy either. And I think that's okay. I'm not criticising her as a person, I'm criticising her skill. And it's the same with Zia Youssef because people would go, oh, you say you don't want to criticise people, but you've called him a fascist. And I was like, well, the first thing is I didn't actually call him a fascist. He said to me, next you'll call me a fascist. And I was like, well, you absolutely are a fascist. So he asked me a question and I answered the question. But I also think if you can't name people what you believe that they are, then that's not criticism of the person. That's criticism of their political belief. Actually, as it happens, I was on Question Time with him and a Tory MP. And it was the Tory MP who was more difficult with me in the green room afterwards than Zia was. Zia kind of took it on the chin as kind of Reform and Greens are fighting, that's what we do. We kind of just left each other alone. But the Tory came over to me to say that it's absolutely outrageous that I just called someone a fascist on live TV.
Don't be a fascist.
I pushed back and said, this is the party who want to, and I talked what they wanted to do to migrants, what Nigel Farage has said about voting blocks changing. And then he started to defend it. And then I said, you know what, you're in a party that's being led by Kemi Badenoch. Like, I don't think we've got a meeting ground here in terms of what we think is acceptable or unacceptable politics. And I think it is kind of sad that, I mean, it's more than sad that the whole centre of politics has been dragged so far to the right that you now have Tory MPs in what could have been considered like a moderate right party under David Cameron, for instance. I still didn't agree with.
We listened to a clip of John Major the other day talking about, he was giving a speech at the London School of Economics talking about the impact of Brexit, which why Labour just won't just take their bull by the bloody horns there. You're talking about this gaping hole, you're talking about all this lost money. We've got John Major, who was such a, that was a Conservative Party, right? That's not now, where we've just got these far right.
It was a brilliant speech.
Idiots.
Brilliant.
And that showed you how far we've come in terms of that Overton window shifting. But also that was another thing. It's like, why is no one, when we keep talking about this gaping hole of in the Treasury that we haven't got, we're trying to pull little bits here, there, we're tinkering around the edges. Just deal with the problem where we're losing 100 billion, he said, 100 billion per year.
Yeah. And for me, the next time I'm on anything and a Brexiteer or somebody who wholeheartedly supported Brexit starts to moan about the economy, I'm a bit like, shut up.
Yeah.
You have
You don't have a leg to stand on.
not very elegant, but just you don't. It's and when I bring up Brexit, the B word, people just go ugh. They roll their eyes like it's something I should have moved on from, and I'm like, but it is causing this sluggish economy, and it's one of the biggest problems that we face. Would you get us back in?
Yeah, I absolutely would, and I've said
Yeah.
that a few times on the record. I
Yeah.
think where I was going to say different, I don't even know if it's I differ. We're talking about a comms thing here. Is I think people are so exhausted about hearing about Brexit, and I think sometimes when politicians bring up Brexit unless they've been asked about it, I imagine a lot of people switch off because they just go, we voted, it's been a mess, we know that, but just like, let's move on from that. Now, I don't agree with that sentiment at all. I think we do need to have a conversation about how disastrous leaving the European Union has been, both socially, culturally, but also economically, which is what you're bringing up.
Yeah.
What I don't know and I don't have an answer for, and I'm always interested in thoughts, is like, is now the time to start going, actually, let's have a conversation about what we've lost and what we need to bring in again. And I think it probably is starting to be the time, which is why I've started to talk about it more in the last couple of weeks. We're coming up to 10 years
think so.
in
I mean,
June.
I've got a 20-year-old and a 19-year-old, and I worry a great deal about them. And yet they're very privileged. They've got parents that love them, you know, that they're loved, all of that stuff. So they should have a good start in life. But you're coming into it, they're going to be going into job markets. I think there's 33% fewer jobs available for graduates last year. That's partly because of AI, like all those entry-level jobs have gone. I don't even really know how to advise them on certain industries anymore because those industries don't seem to be happening. You know, they're not going to be able to afford rent, a house. I love them, fine, but it's not
Just as well,
natural
Gemma,
for
'cause they're gonna be
30-year-olds
with
to
you
be
for a
living
long
with you,
time.
paying for all their bloody food. You know, and it's dire. So I just feel like it is a bit of an emergency. That budget, it's all sluggish. It's like, oh, it's exhausting. We're all going to be feeling the pinch. Nothing's going to change. You know, you've got the climate crisis coming down the track. So I think people need bold ideas, and I think you're cutting through because you have a positivity about you. You might not realise it, but you do. I was listening to Ed Davey, who I really respect, and I think he's got some brilliant ideas.
Although he had some beef about me yesterday on the TV as well.
did he?
I'm like,
I
come on,
missed
Ed,
that.
that's not necessary.
Okay, but I feel like his comms, you know, we're in a very attention deficit like society now, and he's all very like, and you know, the thing is, and so you do need people who are good communicators. And what you're talking about is being real, being honest, being a little bit positive, and that's what we need to hear, I think.
What did he say about you?
So Sophie Ridge asked him what he thought about me. And I've been asked those questions about other people before, and I just always think the best answer you can give is something that's a bit diplomatic and then push yourself forward. But he said, I was a Liberal Democrat that didn't get selected and then left the party.
Oh, Jappy, Ed!
First of all, we're going back like over 10 years now. Second, that's not why I left the party. I left the party because I had an argument with Ed Davey about military intervention in Syria, where there wasn't going to be a vote and the Lib Dems were going to kind of back this intervention. Now, the intervention aside on it, it just seemed outrageous to me that you would have a party with Democratic in the title who would get involved with a war without going to the country's elected representatives to decide it. Anyway, I was really pleased because I retweeted it with the Mariah Carey meme of, I don't know her.
Do you know what? I've just realised there's one thing you and Liz Truss have in common.
Oh, God, here
You're
we go.
both Lib Dems.
Right.
But I think
And it ends there.
But you know what? We're joking. I think this says something serious, though. I've just said that we shouldn't attack other people, but I am going to have a little jab at the Lib Dems now. I think it speaks to how broad their coalition is, i.e., how much they don't stand for anything at this point.
Yeah.
If you can have a party that has a Tory Prime Minister in it. the
Well, no,
leader of
she
the
was
Green
for
Party.
5 minutes because her parents were, and she was influenced. I mean, she's obviously
Also,
fruit-
she is just,
I mean,
she's
that was a
completely
joke.
nuts.
Like, it would be more of a natural home for someone like you to go from there to the Greens.
They've got 72 MPs, but when I think about those different MPs, I couldn't tell you what that collective project is about. And speaking to one of those Lib Dem MPs, who I won't name for obvious reasons, but they said to me, lots of those MPs got elected by accident. They did so well in the general election under a first past the post system that people got elected who weren't necessarily target candidates.
Okay.
So they've got this whole broad spectrum of people, which is often what the Greens get criticised for, or people like try and criticise us to go, oh, they've got people in rural seats and they've got people in urban seats as MPs. And for me, that's not a divide, because actually the running theme theme for the Green Party is environmental, social, racial and economic justice. And those exist whether you live in the countryside or whether you live in the city. Inequality matters. It runs throughout everything you do. If you're a farmer, you're being screwed over by the supermarkets who aren't paying you properly. If you're a young renter, you might be getting screwed over by the landlord. But I'm not sure what the Lib Dems version of that is. Yeah. Like, I just literally don't know what they stand for.
So...
Not that you're here to speak on
No, but where I'm coming from is it's, you know, the first time in my life where the next time we have the chance to vote, I just want to vote wholeheartedly for a party that I actually believe in. I don't want to be doing it tactically. I did vote tactically last time. I was desperate for the Tories to go. Right. I think everybody was, you know, corrupt, awful, etc. So at that point, I was going to vote for any party, if I'm completely honest, that was going to beat them.
Yeah.
So yes, I voted Lib Dem last time because it was them or the Tory. I'm not going to do that again. I've decided.
On the Lib Dems, I think part of their problem is I don't know because they don't get much airtime.
Right.
And if they do, maybe it's not particularly compelling and it's terrible, but we are in this attention deficit society. And Zack, you're plugging into that, like you are addressing that and you are everywhere. In fact, how are you everywhere? Like, how are you doing it? How are you getting all those? Do you have an agent? Like, how does it work that you get all of these amazing opportunities to speak to the masses?
So this comes back to, like, before I became leader, I heard Lewis Goodall, of all people, on I shouldn't name other people's podcasts. No, I will do. The news agents.
Yeah. We're socialists. We promote other people's podcasts.
Yeah.
Nice, very good. It's true. And
the Trawl podcast.
Love it. He said that if the Green Party wanted to get attention, they should grab a leaf from Ed Davies' book and start like bungee jumping and doing tricks and things like that. And I remember watching him doing it and thinking, I just don't think that's true. I think that's a way of getting attention. But then once you've got the attention, what do you do with it unless you have a political program that's exciting to people, inspires people, and makes people go, you know what, if the party was in power, that's what I'd want them to be doing. So from running my campaign as leader to being leader, I've just gone, actually, what is the program we want to do? What does it look like when you say things, even when they might be unpopular or inconvenient, but actually you make sure you back it up with research and science, you say it in an empathic way, and you win people over to your side of the story? Because I think far too much of politics is like, people are over there, so I'm going to go to where people are and I'm going to try and drag them over here, as opposed to you know what, I'm pretty much going to stay where I am. I might meet you in the middle and put out a hand and say, come over here, come on. And I think that's what's happening. And I think the reason why I'm getting booked so much, touch wood, is that journalists are going, he'll come on, he'll say what he thinks, he won't kind of obfuscate it, he won't kind of bullshit me, he'll just kind of say what he thinks, and if I really don't like it as a journalist, then that's a great clip because we can get into a proper kind of argument and he can hold himself. And I think that's what's going
from
through.
From a media point of view, you know, we've been so frustrated by the domination of bloody Farage, but there is a reason he's had so much media. Partly it's because he gets the clicks, and I mean this in a completely complimentary way. Suddenly you've got this person who's polar opposite, but is also commanding attention and is good. You're good for them because people want to listen and people are sharing and so they're just fed by that basically. But also with the Lib Dems, I'm going to be honest, the reason they appealed to me for a while is because they were the strongest voice on rejoining Europe, which is the thing. Brexit is the thing that got me into politics, so I care deeply. I can see the damage that it's caused, so I was like, that was a very positive thing for me.
Do you know what would be really good for the clicks? You and Farage, a fireside chat.
Oh, I'm so ready for that, although I don't think it'd be quite a chat.
No.
But a debate, I'm ready. I was meant to debate Richard Tice at Glastonbury, but then he pulled out because he said it wasn't a safe space. So I got to call him a snowflake.
Dickie! Dickie, we've both had fun with Dickie.
He's very, I think I may have read, might need to be checked, but I don't think Dickie did too well back at school, bless him. But thankfully, Dickie, his dad, did rather well, and he was able to inherit a great big business.
And I should also be clear that we're talking about the Lib Dems, but I don't consider them the enemy, quote unquote. No. Like, it's taking a fight to reform is the thing here.
Yeah.
I just find though that people often go, oh, I'll vote for the party who can most win in my seat, and I just go, but what is the long-term aim of that plan?
Yeah.
If they don't really stand for anything, and that might be me being unfair, but I still, you know, I'm someone who pays fair amount of attention to politics, and I couldn't tell you other than some key policies where the Lib Dems are going. The other thing that I reflect on, so just coming to you now, this is going to sound like a humble brag, but it was lovely. I was on the bus, and this is happening to me every day, and a group of young people came over and went, oh, can we have a selfie? I said, yeah. And then an older person was like, oh, can I have a selfie? It was just very, very diverse, and then suddenly the whole bus is chatting to me. It's amazing, and it's so hopeful and exciting. I wonder if Farage has that. And that's something I just genuinely don't know.
I'm pretty sure I have seen him walking through the streets, although it's always quite controlled environment, isn't it? Where you've got people that are very happy to see him because he is a celeb, right? Especially if he shows up in Platinum. I'm pretty sure he's a celeb. But there will be lots of people, hence the milkshake situations, that don't like him.
Yeah.
And if he were to walk down, say, for example, I don't know, your street in your town, Oxford Street, wherever.
But is he on the bus?
Stroll.
Is Farage on the bus?
He's probably not with his Oyster card, is he?
Dickie Tice is in Dubai. A little Dubs is in Dubs with Izzy Oakeshott. And Farage is doing God knows what. And that's the thing that pisses me off, this man of the people bullshit, when you absolutely know he is not. He is so establishment. And I also think, and I always worry about saying the right thing, but I think there's so much more to come to light. And I don't want to sound tinfoil hat at the moment, but the thing that depresses me, you look at this Venn diagram and a lot comes back to those Epstein emails,
right?
And you see people who are mentioned within them, and I don't know whether now I'm talking about patriarchy or billionaire wealth and influence, but there's so much wrong in this world.
Russian influence.
And there seems to be so much connection, and I feel like we're on the brink of people needing the scales fall from their eyes. And I don't know how we, just like three normal people comparatively, can do anything about it. But when you've got powerful billionaires on the same side as Trump not wanting those emails, those files to come out, we're in a terrible place. That the people who are running the world are just trying to protect themselves and their crappy reputations. So that's why it's so good that the only thing they can find on you is something silly that you did once, and that's it.
Something that really strikes me, actually, is something the media use to attack me, but I imagine pretty much loads of us a lot, is they kind of say I'm the TikTok politician, or it's just on social media. But actually, again, I just invite journalists to come out with me and go, actually, this is clearly happening in our streets, not just in London. I'm getting it in the north of England too, and in Wales.
And in the YouGov polls.
Right.
Like the YouGov
Totally.
polls, that's not social media, is it?
I think the thing you're going to have to fight is you're going to have to fight certain people's preconceptions about the Green Party, about like, oh, they're a little bit sort of lefty mung bean. How are they going to because business is important to people, right? If you look at middling, like huge swathes, millions and millions of people, they just want to know that their business is going to function, that the schools are going to be good and that kind of thing. But they will think, oh, far left, like, will he be able to be in the room with serious economists, and will he be able to do geopolitics? Will he be able to? And of course, we know you can. Right. We're convinced. We're already there. But that's going to be your battle.
Well, I mean, that did come up with Trevor Phillips, didn't it?
Yeah.
So Trevor Phillips, and it went a bit viral, basically discussing how you would handle Putin and his disarmament. But you're saying you would ask him not to have nuclear weapons. And I think a few people took that as, you can't. He's not serious.
It's interesting because the Daily Express said they changed the story to I said I'd ask him nicely, which is not something I ever said. So the thing, what's interesting is often you get the sensibles who say this is a ludicrous thing to say, and then I always want to turn it back round on them and go, so what's your proposition here? Are we going to invade Russia? Are we going to war with Russia? Like, if we're not willing to have negotiations with people, then we might as well all give up. And what strikes me is they sometimes criticize me for saying that I didn't want Donald Trump to have a state visit. I thought that was outrageous. And they go, you've got to talk to world presidents or world leaders. And I go, yeah, of course you do. That's my entire point. So I would talk to Donald Trump. I would negotiate with Donald Trump. I'd hate every single second of it. But in a democracy, that's what happens if someone's been democratically elected. You sit with them and you talk with them and you try and convince them to positions that you think are highly unlikely. But that's the starting position, is you go, what would be the ideal in this scenario? Then let's talk. That's all I was saying with Putin, is not going into the agreement like wrestling with him or arm wrestling with him, but actually going, the first place I would like us to start is to go, what does a world look like without nuclear weapons? Okay, you don't agree. Okay, let's start to negotiate. But the idea that you would go in there with any other proposition than that is absolutely absurd.
The fact that you were positioned as, he's not serious, he's not made for this job, when actually the leader of the free world is literally just going, I don't know what's going on behind closed doors, must be just, he's completely compromised. He's passing off peace plans that are quite clearly authored in Russia. His trade envoy to Russia, Steve Witkoff, is on those leaked tapes advising Putin's men or whatever on how to best pitch the peace plan to Trump. And that's all totally fine. And then you're just saying, I'd do a different approach, actually. I try and push back, and you're not the serious person.
How many nuclear weapons does the world bloody need anyway? Jesus, how many times do we want to be able to blow each other up?
I know, it's so stupid.
Just once. is enough.
So to finish off, where do you think all of this is going? What happens next?
We all need hope, right? And Zoran Mamdani achieving what he achieved in New York was wonderful to see. And I'm sorry, Zack, it's on you.
It's on you, exactly.
you.
We always follow the states. We're a little bit behind, aren't we? And I think you are our Mamdani. And Mamdani went from, a year ago, he had 10,000 followers. A year later, he is the mayor-elect of New York and influencing how Donald Trump dresses and styles his hair.
Yeah.
So I think your trajectory, if you were to forecast based on that trajectory, then God knows what. I said to my husband today, it's weird, I'm going off today. I'm going to have do a podcast with potentially our future leader one day.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Well, it's
no
interesting
pressure.
that you've taken the question as that, because that would have been a highly egoist question to be like, what happens next with me? But actually, my kind of whole political agenda, and I think you're both on board with this is about communities and grassroots. And actually the people who are at the microphone are actually there to inspire and empower other people.
Completely.
Do you think we can turn this around with community organising, with grassroots groups?
I do, because I think if you look at history, everything is cyclical. It is a slightly scary dystopian world, to say the least, at the moment, but there's so much good out there, and people inherently are more good than people give them credit for. You know, we shared a clip in the Trawl. It was this
Channel
guy
4.
who was absolutely believed that all immigrants come over here on boats. You know, they want something from us. They've got, bad intentions. And then he just spent some time with this Syrian guy, and by the end he's hugging him. He's like, I love you. You're amazing. He was like, his whole mind was fried, and he was full of love again. And so, it makes me feel emotional thinking about it, actually. I do. I'm very tired. Sorry if I cry. But I think, so of course there's hope. And of course we all just keep going, and our tiny little drops of things amount to an ocean, and we can do it. Look at the 1930s. Look at the evil that is always sadly prevalent in the world. But then eventually you hit a wall and people realise that there is a better way. So people will realise again. And I think that young people are going to have to be really pragmatic. And I think people of my age are already talking about their old age. For instance, all my friends were talking about pooling, about we're not going to be, there's no social care. We haven't got big enough pensions to be able to see us through with any quality of life. So maybe we buy a shack somewhere and we pool. I'd have to learn how to grow beans or something. I'm hoping I can just be the entertainment and pour the drinks. But so people will evolve and they'll find better ways. And that is about community, and maybe a zhuzhy commune. I don't want to live on a shit commune. I want to live it's got to be nice. It's got to be a dance floor. It's got to have a nice bathtub, stuff like that. Yeah?
This was pretty good. Are you going to compete?
I'm
Not
not
that we
going
need to
to
compete.
got
We
to
can
come.
share.
Obviously, I'm going to have a place.
Obviously got to come whether her
in.
husband likes it or not. I can negotiate with Ben.
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I find this whole period so choppy. When we came into politics, Jemma and I talking about it, we were laughing about, Liz Truss and her Claire's accessories earrings, and it was, talking about Boris Johnson and the absolute state of events. And in this small 3-year window, we've seen incredible decline, right? We've been seeing horrors. And then I think we were sort of almost saying to each other, we do a lot of voice notes, it's going to be a reform government. We're going to have to deal with a reform government. But, and it feels like something has shifted now. And I think Reform at time of record are on their lowest polling to date. So I think it's 25%. So, possibly that means 75% of Brits have sussed them already. And so I think actually that hope has been reinstated now. So who knows? And I'm just please don't fuck up Zack. Please don't fuck up.
No pressure.
And I love this country so much. I've never, ever, ever, ever wanted to leave it. I like the telly. I like the people. I don't speak any other languages.
I love that the telly went out there first. It's
love
Gogglebox
British
is
telly.
the best thing about being British.
100%. I'm half Italian. The Italian telly is shit.
Dancing ladies? What are you talking about?
Really bad. Seriously, don't know how lucky you are. I've never wanted to leave. But I think if Farage got in, I would want to leave, and then I couldn't because I now can't go to Europe because of him. So that's annoying. So he can't get in.
I'm going to end on that note. Thank you very much, and do check out the Trawl.
Hello, Zack. Now listen, I've had a text, I know, improbable but true, from the Beavers, the Butterflies, the Beatles and the Badgers. It's all sending you big love for signing up. They're hoping that your listeners are going to do the same by visiting ecotalk.co.uk.